Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on the IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman. Please don't forget to stay tuned to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station after the Drive at 5 for Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. Before we start, the views that are expressed on the Drive at 5 are not the opinions of Intellectual Radio and iHeart radio station. And I repeat again, the views that are expressed on the Drive at 5 are not the opinions of IntellectualRadio.com and iHeart radio station. Tonight, the doctor is in.
Are you apologizing for what I'm about to say?
Tonight, the doctor is in and ready to give his diagnosis on the election, Chicago, and what's going on in the world. Give a Drive at 5. Welcome to the one and only Dr. Charles Thomas. Welcome to the Drive. Welcome
you're the
back.
First person to call me Dr. Charles Thomas since Willie Wilson.
Why you have to go there now?
Well, doctor, he calls you doctor. Willie calls me Dr. Thomas, and I say to Willie, hey, look, I only have a bachelor's degree, and he said, but that's all right. That's all right.
He's running for mayor. So
that's right.
There's a lot to get into and ready for your diagnosis. So, doctor, let's get ready. A couple of weeks ago, Illinois had its primary, and the numbers are embarrassing. Only 10% of Cook County voted in the primary, the lowest it's ever been in history.
It was 10%?
10%.
Oh, man, I was hearing 15 for some of the
10%.
Some of the black wards in the city. But it's 10%,
10%
countywide?
Countywide.
Oh, my goodness. That's horrible.
Now, what are your thoughts about the lowest turnout in Cook County history?
I think it's a real harbinger of trouble for J.B. Pritzker.
Why?
Because Cook County has got to turn out, particularly the black vote in Cook County has got to turn out 85, 90, 95% for the Democrats, as it usually turned out for Democrats. If it doesn't do it, then JB could be in trouble. He's got to motivate black voters to get them out, because that's the formula. I've heard Republicans say that if they're able to keep the black vote below 85%, they have a chance to win. If they can keep it at 80% or lower, this is the black vote, then they will win. And this has happened many times in the past in Illinois, particularly during that 25-year run in the late 20th century when Republicans dominated the statewide offices, particularly the governor's office. That could happen again because the Democrats have benefited from a shift in the Chicago suburbs. A lot of those usually Republican voters, white voters in the suburbs, voted Democrat, particularly over these last three elections. Why? Well, because Barack Obama, a favorite son, was running. Hillary Clinton ran, of course, in 2016. So the suburbs were voting Democrat. But if this election holds true, I think the suburbs, in large part because of Joe Biden and $5 gasoline, the suburbs are going to go back to voting Republican again. And the Democrats are going to need that overwhelming support among black voters in order to hold on to power. And it's very questionable right now. And these numbers that came out of Cook County during the primary, 10%, that means people weren't voting. They weren't motivated.
That brings me to the black community, which you said the turnout was very disappointing as well. Less than 5% of the majority who voted in a primary were white voters, which alluded to the people who voted in the black community was less than 5%.
Okay.
Now, the people who voted in the primary in this election, majority were white voters. What does it say to the powers that be about holding elections in the summertime?
I don't think it's the summertime. I don't think the weather had anything to do with it. In fact, I believe on election day, there was 85 degrees and sunshine, right? I mean,
Right.
there was perfect weather. I think people are beginning to feel as though voting, particularly in Chicago and Cook County, does not make a difference. You're going to vote, you're voting for the Democratic Party as opposed to individual candidates. Because you put one Democrat in an office in Chicago and Cook County, what's going to change? The Democratic Party is in charge of Cook County. Unfortunately, the Republican Party is not offering much of an alternative at this point. They aren't speaking to those voters in the city and in Cook County. Now, downstate, there is enthusiasm, not only for Donald Trump or Mary Miller, whatever her name is, but
But
all,
she had a major
well,
gap,
yeah, but
and
did it,
and and and
but,
and a lot of people didn't call her out
but
on
she
that gap.
won. She won. And Darren Bailey is, I'm not predicting he's going to win. I'm saying there is enthusiasm. There's the enthusiasm factor. And the downstate Republicans have it right now.
So getting back to that representative, she said, "Make America white again," and why she hasn't been censored or like you can't do that again. I mean, actually, that a lot of people say, "Oh, she misspoke," but come on
Well,
now,
she
from great to
well, she
white,
said she said no, it make America.
white again.
I think no right was. I think she was saying said something about. She said right. I don't know, but
Yeah,
she said white. We heard her what she said. Now if she says she misspoke, whatever.
it took a
It
while
played. It
before.
played to her constituency down there. She wasn't speaking on 47th Street in Chicago. She was speaking to a group of downstate people, farmers and the like, or whatever, whoever is in that particular area at a Trump rally.
So why Black Caucus didn't call her out on it?
What can they do about it? Did they? I think a lot of people have called her out. Remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the late 1980s. I think it was 1988. And Richard M. Daley said he was running to in the race to be the official mayor after Harold Washington. Of course,
Mhm.
Eugene Sawyer was running against him. And
Right.
he said, Chicago needs a white mayor. Do you remember that? He said that. Now, when they asked him, that was a racist thing to say, Richard M. Daley. And he said, we didn't say that. His handler said, he said Chicago needs a wet mayor. I, look, I'm not making this up. This man, he said Chicago needs a wet mayor. No, he said Chicago needs a white mayor. And that resonated with a lot of people on the Northwest side at that point, at that time in Bridgeport and Canaryville and the Southwest side. That resonated with a lot of white ethnics who were a voting bloc in the city back then. He said that. And he won in 1989 and remained mayor for 22 years after saying that. Um, I don't, yeah, it's Mary Miller, right? That's her name. She should be sanctioned or whatever, and people should definitely file that away. And those who were offended by it, of course, should not vote for her. But she wasn't speaking to people in Chicago. In her district, it played.
A lot of voters were confused during the change in this election. Some did not know where w- there was an election. They didn't know. So, do you think the November election, what should we be prepared for? However, that. was not it. Who to blame for the poor election notification about the changes in precincts, as well as the low numbers of election judges that played a role into this during the primary?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has to take a lot of responsibility for that because, after all, it is a primary, and the primary run in Chicago and Cook County is run by Democrats. I mean, there's very little to vote for on the Republican side. In fact, I didn't I looked at the Republican ballot, and I think after the governor, Secretary of State, the Attorney General, um, I don't think there was Republicans did not run anybody for controller. But anyway, there were no state reps, there were no state senators on the Republican side on my ballot. They didn't run anybody. So by default, you take a Democrat ballot in Chicago and Cook County. So the voters who didn't show up, they didn't show up for the Republicans because in many cases there weren't any Republicans to vote for. But the Democrats had to get people out. I don't think they wanted to get people out, to be honest with you. They didn't
To
have,
keep the incumbents in.
yeah, that keeps the incumbents in, and then they can run in the fall if they do have a Republican candidate. But a lot of them here in Chicago and Cook County, you win the primary, you're in. And a lot of these politicians, they're into self preservation at election time, not change or anything noble like that.
So, what effects, if any, the low voter turnout had on the results in the primary?
What result? What effect?
Yeah, what
Oh, I
effect?
think a lot of incumbents were reelected. I mean, they weren't challenged. Um, they didn't have to answer any questions. They just put their name. They put their name in, and they did most of their work keeping other people off the ballot. That's what they do in Democrat Cook County and Chicago. They try to keep anybody who has a chance off the ballot with challenges. And I'm sure that happened to a certain extent. I think in the sheriff's race, um, I think Tom Dart was able, the incumbent sheriff, his people were able to keep his uh, opponent. They basically protected him. Um, and the one candidate, I think someone who works in his office, a woman, a Latina who works in his office, was running, and she, hey, I don't know, they, she couldn't run. They kept her off the ballot on a technicality. So that's what they do. That's their idea of politics, not really having a conversation about the issues that might be affecting people. And I think people are getting wise to it. They know that if they vote for people in this region, Chicago and Cook County, they're going to get the Democratic Party, which basically is the same old stuff. And hey, there's other things you can do other than go vote when your government is like that.
Who are the winners and losers in this election?
In the primary,
Yeah,
I, who were the winners? Well,
yeah,
I
and
mean the people who got the most votes, I guess. But I mean, I can tell you who the losers are.
okay, the
The
losers.
losers are the people. The losers are the people. You, me, uh, and everybody else who has to pay taxes, who has to, buy gasoline and food, and a home, and we that's how we lose. We lose, and we lost big time. I mean, you've already seen some major companies beginning to pull out of Chicago.
And also Pratt Winkle is doing her budgetary thing this week, and one is taxes and whether or not she will raise the county taxes to be announced
I don't. You think she'll do that before the election? I think she'll. There might be some general proposals out there, but I don't think she'll do it
until
before
after.
until after the election, and she has time to do that. I think traditionally that's something they've all, politicians here in Chicago and Cook County have always done. They've waited until after the election, of course, to lower the boom on taxes because they figured that people won't be able to react to that for another 3.5 years when they stand for reelection.
Do you think the candidates receive a fair shake in this primary? Do you really feel like they really got a fair shake?
Who? Which candidates?
No, I'm talking about against the incumbents, meaning
No,
from
of course not. I mean, not in this system. Because if you run in the Democratic primary, you're running for the party. And if you run against the party, your chances of winning are slim and none. I know of a couple of candidates who ran against party endorsed candidates and won. I know Willie Preston, who became a state senator on the South Side, replacing Jacqueline Collins, who ran for Congress. She didn't run for reelection as a senator. She ran for the United States Congress to replace Bobby Rush. She lost, but this young man named Willie Preston, who had run for state rep on the South Side in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood a couple of times in the past, was able to win the Jackie Collins Senate seat running against a party endorsed candidate. So that was change.
do you think the media coverage of this primary cycle was biased towards the incumbents?
Well, I don't know. It's about media coverage these days. I think it's about how much money you have and whether or not you're able to get on the radio and get on television and deliver your message. And the incumbents had the money to do that. Those who were going to advertise that much, who had reason to advertise. It's very difficult for a challenger to come up with the money, particularly if they don't currently hold office. Uh, so I don't know if it's the media, the coverage of it. I think we can have a separate conversation about what's going on nationally, but locally, I think it was pretty much a matter of having the money to buy the time, radio, television, print, whatever, to get your message out. Nationally, I think there's some issues about media coverage and how coverage is conducted by journalists or reporters. But here, I think locally, it was about who had the money. And J.B. Pritzker, for instance, had enough money. Of course, he is a billionaire. He had enough money not only to promote himself, but to promote the candidate against whom he wanted to run. He actually did ads helping Darren Bailey, the eventual Republican nominee, by calling Bailey the most conservative. And that made people downstate, those enthusiastic voters I talked about. Oh, they started rubbing their hands together. Oh boy, you mean Darren is so conservative that JB called him out on it?
So
They loved that.
why they called Richard Irving, I invented this word, a Republican?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about the Republican Party, to show how troubled it is, their people took offense to the fact that Richard Irvin voted in Democrat primaries in the past. The Republicans were calling him a a stealth candidate, a Democrat, a rhino, whatever, the Republican in name only. That he was really a Democrat trying to sneak in to the governor's office as a Republican. Well, the Republicans, what they don't understand is that the only way they're going to win in November is to have people who voted Democrat in 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, those four national elections. They have to convert those people into Republicans. They and the Urban campaign made a huge mistake by not explaining who he was. He could be a lot of people who are fed up with the Democratic Party and see the light
But they labeled him as a Republican.
Right. Which I think they should have backed off that. They did it in a pejorative way. They did it in a negative way. They did that to criticize him. But if what's his Urban's people had said, "Hey, Richard Urban, yeah, he voted Democrat in the past because he saw the light. He saw what you people were doing, and he wants to be a Republican now, and he can bring hundreds of thousands of other people who feel the same way, who are fed up with the Democrats." But they didn't do that because why? Because I tell you, Republican Party in Illinois, man, you talk about that's not a bright light. They are not the brightest lights in the world. I don't get it. They're so hung up on this party stuff that they don't understand how they can win. They don't understand. They will spend. I know Bruce Rauner, who I got to know fairly well because I covered him when he was governor. Bruce Rauner would spend tens of millions, $100 million on TV ads. I told Bruce Rauner one time. I said, Bruce, I call him Bruce. I said, man, why don't you start a little league team on the South Side? Why don't the Republican Party open some offices down in the black community? Do some things. Do some things down there. And I believe people will respond because Mike Madigan wasn't doing it. That's for sure. I mean, Corey Brooks sat there on the vacant lot across the street from his church, the pastor, the ones on the roof. He would sit there, man, and be Republican. But they never did anything to build him a community center that he wanted.
Finally, a Republican did.
But they gave him some money.
You're right.
It's not built
Griffin.
yet. Let's
Okay.
It had not built yet, but he could have built it 10 years ago when Corey Brooks was
But
standing
first, a lot of people
sitting on
thought
the
he
roof.
was a Democrat.
Who?
A lot of people thought Corey Brooks,
Who
Reverend
did?
Corey. A lot of people thought he was a Democrat. He never announced his affiliation. Let's be honest with you with that. Um, and and I asked him like when he came on the show a while ago, and I said, "Are you a Republican?" And he said, "Yes." Does your constituents, your church um, parishioners know that? He said he doesn't know.
But and the other thing, and he lost a lot of parishioners, a lot of his congregation, as did James Meeks,
That's one
who
of the reasons
who
he
supported,
retired.
yeah,
Yeah.
who supported, I think, Bruce Rauner in 2014
Mhm.
against Pat Quinn, and he lost a lot of members of his church. So did um,
That's why
Corey
he
Brooks. But
announced
we're,
his
we're kind of getting
retirement.
off the subject.
Right.
I'm saying that why doesn't the Republican Party more aggressively spend all that money they have in trying to develop the black vote? Because I'm telling you something, the Democrats have done nothing for black people here. I'll say that. I haven't seen anything. I mean, the cannabis situation is the classic one when JB promised equity and delivered nothing. There's not one black owned license that's operating right now. The gaming industry, the same way. There's no black ownership in gaming, even though black people stepped forward to get involved. He didn't help. He didn't.
So the Speaker of the House,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Welch,
Yes.
he's African American.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? Why do you think he stepped up to the plate
No,
and
I
providing?
don't see anything. I mean, I still see these wanton murders in the street. I don't see any business development yet, but he's only been in office for less than 2 years. I mean, I give him some time, I'm sure, but right now, just because we settle for symbolism so easily. I mean,
But
we
then
we
again,
get
to be
so
fair,
excited
but
about symbolism and nothing of substance. And it's time to be the first this and the first that. That's over. That's over. We need some serious economic development in our communities. And I haven't seen that. And your schools are just horrific in Chicago. Horrific. which Republican is involved in making the Chicago public schools so horrific? Name me that Republican who did that. Hmm?
I can't.
You can't.
Mhm.
You can't name Republicans in communities on the south and west sides, as they're referred to, that Republicans are involved in doing these doing anything that created the pathology that exists in those communities. Um, but we knee jerk and go vote for the Democrats. Um, at some point, it's going to change. I think it's already changing, but I think the first sign of the change is apathy. The fact that people are not going to vote because the Republicans haven't offered anything. I'll give you that. But now people are saying, I ain't going to vote for what? For who? I mean, what are they going to do?
So you're saying give Chris Welch some time, and
Well,
then,
I mean, you have to. He's only been in office. He's been in office less than 2 years.
but some people have been in office for 2 years and have done.
Who? I mean,
I
but
mean,
I'm going to give the brother the benefit of the doubt at
okay.
this point. And keep in mind, too, he's just one. He's a speaker. There's no doubt he's got a lot of clout, but he's still just one representative. He's got to plow through a lot of stuff that happened for the last 50, 75 years in the Democratic Party. He's got to navigate all that. And then he did this thing with his wife. It's his wife.
His
He
wife is now
supported
a
her
judge.
to be the judge. I mean, a lot of people looked at that, kind of giving him the side eye on that because, like, hey, is this more the same? Um, yeah, so he's got a ways to go, if you will, um, and we'll see.
Now let's discuss the upcoming November election and the mayoral race. What is your analysis on this upcoming election, and where you think the finger of the pulse of the voters is going?
It's going on Joe Biden. Joe Biden and is going to drag down the Democratic Party. I mean, there were more people voted for Joe Biden in 2020 than any president, American president in history. I think it was 81 million people voted for Joe Biden, and he won. He won. We don't believe Donald Trump says it was stolen from him. No, those people came out. They voted for Joe Biden, and that's real. But here's the deal: people who voted for Joe Biden just don't want to believe it. They don't want to admit that they really screwed up. You're looking at me. You're looking at me funny.
Well,
Well,
let me try and answer this one. I'm going to say it depends. Wait. It depends. Okay, why we're not going after Joe Manchin and Christina Cinema? Why we're not going after them? Because John Lewis could have passed. They're the two that stalled. They're the two that kind of dismantled everything. We could have a lot of things in play, including the codify of Roe v. Wade, if it wasn't for them two. Those are the yin and yang of the Democratic Party.
you really believe you think that this president?
He's
Look,
not,
wait, a minute, wait. a minute.
and let me put it this
You
way.
you talking about these issues. I think at this point have become rather esoteric. When you talk about Roe v. Wade or the voting rights, the John Lewis Act, or whatever, man, I'm tripping on the price of gasoline, dog. I mean, come on, man. I'm talking about gasoline. I gotta have gas to get to the job. I've got to have it. I can't spend $10, $15 on a chicken. Let me continue.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. This is the stuff that people are thinking about. And then to top it off with the granddaddy of them all, there have been 12 presidents, I've counted them, since the nuclear bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Every one of those presidents has managed to avoid getting involved in a shooting war with another nuclear armed power. This guy, Joe Biden, has fallen into the trap, and we are firing American made weapons and openly at the Russians. We can't win that. They can't win that. We can't lose that. They can't lose that. They are going to lose. You think if their back is against the wall at the very end, what they're going to do? They're going to press that button, man. Our foreign policy has sucked us into that. Why are we so concerned about the Ukraine? You got any Ukrainian relatives?
No.
I don't either. And the vast majority of Americans don't. In fact, at this point, we're told that in 2040, most Americans will be people of color. Huh? They won't be from Europe. They'll be people of color. So why are we involved in nuclear brinksmanship in Europe? This foreign policy is stupid. It doesn't fit our country. Yeah, we should defend our country. We should defend. We don't go to Africa to get involved in those wars. They got wars going all over the place.
But let me say this. If you go to Jamaica, if you go to even Africa, if you go to any other places in the world, their gases are triple than ours.
But they don't have cars 30 miles from their job. Up out in the country, man, people are driving 30 miles one way to get to work and 30 miles to get home. And they can't afford to pay $5, $6 a gallon for gasoline. And that is what has happened under this president.
But do
And
you
it's
think
killing him. Man, have you seen the national polls on him?
yes, 37%
Yeah.
recent, but a head-to-head matchup, he wins 44% to 41%
Against who?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Why
that's
do
what
you
they're
presume you're going to run against Donald Trump? So many people, particularly
the media.
Democrats and the liberal media, they are consumed by Donald Trump. They're doing these hearings in Washington, these January 6th hearings, all about Donald Trump. Man, Donald Trump, he was the president. We're talking about what's happening right now. Donald Trump, I mean, he got beat. Donald Trump is history at this point. You can make him history, but we're not attacking the problems that we have in this country. Uh, we're talking about Donald Trump all the time. Trump, Trump, Trump. The media has got what they call it Trump derangement syndrome. And they're just consumed by Donald Trump, and he's not even president. This guy is president, Joe Biden. He can barely walk. He falls. He can't speak. He's forgetful. He has imaginary friends. I mean, come on, man.
I'm not trying to
No,
laugh.
I mean, people don't want to admit that they screwed up with this guy. And I'm not saying they screwed up by voting for by not voting for Donald Trump. There were 13 people up there who were in the Democratic Party running for president, and you guys ended up with Donald Trump. Huh?
Kamala Harris can take.
I don't think so.
You don't think?
I don't think she can. I really don't. I don't think she's.
To see?
Huh?
Who would you like to see?
As a Republican candidate,
Democrat.
A Democrat. Why's it got to be a Democrat?
No, they're still trying to figure out on the Republican side.
I don't see anybody on their bench that I could immediately say would be a good candidate for president that could win. I mean, I'm sure they have people out there who could win. I mean, who could run, but can they win? I think that's the real issue. I don't really see anybody that they have. Now the Republicans, they have a whole bunch of conservative possibilities that could run. The Florida governor seems to have risen to the top of that pack. The other piece you got to remember.
I hope not.
Well, here's the other piece, that if Donald Trump doesn't run, Donald Trump will be the guy who will determine who does run on the Republican ticket. And he will have a kind of power as boss, and to put that in quotes, of the Republican Party to call a lot of shots.
Yes or no? I got to move on to the next question. Yes or no? Do you think Donald Trump will be indicted in the next couple of
No,
months?
absolutely not. Indicted by whom? By whom?
Georgia, Georgia,
Georgia?
Georgia,
Like in a state court?
in the state court
No, I don't think so. Why would he be indicted in a Georgia
because it's
state court?
interference
Man,
with
you
the.
read you listen to a lot of MSNBC, don't you? I mean, you do because you really do. This stuff is so crazy. It's
You
like
had
the
Earl
Russian
laughing in the background
it's
there.
like the
shaking his.
Russian collusion story. Remember that one? Remember that one?
Yeah.
What happened to that one?
There was no collusion.
Exactly. And this stuff that they're coming up with is ridiculous. I mean, it's just craziness. And both sides are doing it. Both sides are, I'm so glad that I'm not reporting right now because number one, they get rid of me in a couple of weeks because I wouldn't follow the narrative, the script. I mean, I read the Tribune and the Sun Times, and both of them they have a script, a narrative that they're following. And the local TV stations actually do the best job of trying to stay neutral, but
They
they just
veer off too.
hmm?
But they veer off too.
They veer off from time to time, but I think they do a better job than the national networks. The national networks have just gone off the rails. They're completely off the rails at this point. But man, Georgia, Georgia, man, Georgia, they might, man. Warnock's gonna have a problem with Herschel, right?
Not according to the polls.
What poll did you read?
They they
I think they're
they did a
points
recent
apart.
poll and they said that Warnock was ahead of Herschel.
Right, by a few points. The election's not until November.
Right.
Okay, by a few points. And the enthusiasm gap, as we've seen here in Illinois, is there too. I'm telling you, man. And then how's Stacy doing?
Um, Actually, it's a tie.
It's what?
She was down, but now it's a tie.
It's a tie.
It's a tie.
Yeah, I haven't seen those numbers, and
Yeah,
I wouldn't know how to read them anyway because I don't
it
know Georgia politics. But
but I think the Supreme Court has something, if not a lot, to do with that. I have to move on quickly. Mayor Leftfoot.
left foot.
Yeah, Mayor Leftfoot or Mayor Littlefoot is in trouble in this coming up election. The reason I call her Mayor Leftfoot is because she's not on the right foot and she's not on a good foot. She's on the left foot. So, do you think she's in trouble in November?
Yes, I mean, but it all depends on who she runs against. If her best bet would be to find a hardcore right wing candidate who can get all of the Northwest Side and Mount Greenwood to get it to support them. To I mean, when I say Mount Greenwood, I mean like Beverly, Mount Greenwood, where a lot of police officers live, as well as the Northwest Side. If she can find a candidate who can coalesce those voters, that person could finish one or two. And if Lori Lightfoot is able to patch together the LBGTQ community and the progressives on the lakefront, we've talked about them so long. I don't even know what that means anymore. The lakefront liberals, if you will, and enough of the black vote, she conceivably could be one of the top two candidates. And if she gets in with one of these hard right people who want to lock them up and throw away the key, she conceivably could be reelected.
Okay, going down the list. Willie Wilson, what is his chances?
I don't think Willie's campaign resonates on the North Side or citywide. Um, I, I don't think his candidacy will resonate up there. I think a lot of black folks, a lot of poor folks, people that needed that money for the gas, they're going to remember that. Whether they actually go out and vote, that's another question. But they remember that and they hold Willie in high regard for that. But I don't. Northwest side, far southwest side.
If
Uh-uh.
and we was talking earlier, do you think if he has a chance with the Hispanics, like cutting through the Hispanics, will he have a chance?
If he does what?
Cut through some of the votes, Hispanic vote.
If he gets
Will
some of the Hispanic vote,
yeah.
sure. If he gets some of the white vote, he has a chance. But I'm just saying, Willie is not his candidacy is not resonating in those areas at this point. Now,
But
if he throws up a great ad campaign,
his ads are out now. You'll see billboards coming soon. The other thing, Lopez. What are his chances?
uh, Lopez is not coming from the Latino community's political wherewithal. You know what I mean? Chuy Garcia is, which he proved quite adeptly during this primary, he's the kingmaker now in that particular part of the vote. And I don't think there are any connections now with Lopez and Chuy.
Jamal Green.
Forget about it.
Wow. Um,
Well, he's I'm just being
um,
real, man.
I forgot there's a state representative.
Oh, Cam Buckner.
Yeah,
I don't know that he has the name recognition on the north side and south and the northwest side and south and far south side. And the reason I say that, and I'm talking about white folks now, right?
hmm
When I say that, there's
hmm
a euphemisms, northwest side, north side. I'm talking about white folks. See, the big part of our problem here, Roman, is that we have lost about 900,000 black folks in the city of Chicago over the past 20, 30 years. We don't have the kind of electoral wherewithal today that we had 30 years ago. We just don't have it. It's not there. Our people have moved to Riverdale, to Matteson, to the south, elsewhere in the south suburbs, even out here where we're sitting right now. In this is Broadview, right?
Westchester.
This is Westchester, Westchester. Black folks 30 years ago, man, you ain't light out here, man. This was almost a sundown town, right? But that's where we live now. We don't live in the city, and we got to come to grips with that. And a lot of the folks that are left in the city aren't voting. Our black middle class, Eighth Ward, 21st Ward, people don't. They're not there anymore.
Do you think Mayor Leftfoot um, disappoints a lot of Chicagoans?
Oh, absolutely, and I'll tell you why. That business she did with Clarence Thomas, that f bomb she threw at Clarence Thomas. Come on, you're the mayor. You're the mayor. You don't need to do that. You don't need to come out there with some profanity. I mean, I don't get. She talking about the size of her imaginary penis. I mean, I, you know, come on now. She got to stop that. She offends me. She offends me that way. I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for her because again, it depends on who she runs against. But I'm offended by that kind of language. I don't need to hear all that.
But there's some people say she's a straight shooter.
Good. Let them think that. And some people say they don't want to hear that out of the mayor. They don't want to hear all that. Not out of the mayor. I can get that at the pool hall.
Crime and shooting victims are getting younger and younger. Most candidates do not have a crime and safety plan that are running for governor or for mayor. Do you think it is time to demand a crime and safety plan to curb the violence? And should people demand one out of these candidates?
Well, absolutely. And I think they do demand them. I think the candidates, though, don't really go for a uh, a multifaceted approach toward it. They'll talk about taking the guns off the street. Um, they'll talk about job training programs, the imaginary job training programs, because I haven't seen them yet. but they don't talk about family. They don't talk about what's happened to the black family over the past 50, 75 years. Brought to you by your neighborhood Democratic Party, by the way, to attack that part of the problem. Um, we're not talking about fatherhood. We're not talking about parenting. Yeah, it's difficult, but at some point we have to talk about it. In fact, people that do talk about it are written off, canceled, or whatever they call it these days. But we at some point have to deal with that. I mean, last night I think it was a 14-year-old caught carjacking somebody in Lincoln Park or something like that.
Yeah, and somebody got just walking the dog in the back of their yard, shot and killed.
Right. That happened last night.
That happened last
Yeah.
night.
But I mean, what 14 years old? What are you doing out hanging out with a 17-year-old robbing people? I mean, at some point in time, we have to uh, basically raise our children, and we need programs that stress that. We need media efforts to address that problem. And it's not going to happen overnight, but we got to address the problem. We have to start messaging people. One of my greatest disappointments, I don't know if I've said this on your show before, one of my greatest disappointments in Barack was the fact that he didn't do enough to promote fatherhood because he's a great father. He was the classic black father. And he didn't lean on that. He didn't. I should have been seeing Barack all the time. I shouldn't be able to drive down 79th Street without seeing a poster with Barack and his family talking about fatherhood, just using the bully pulpit of the president of the presidency. But that's history now. But that's the kind of thing we have to start doing. We have to start selling fatherhood.
I think he did more condemning of black fatherhood than kind of like addressing it. And in my opinion
Hmm.
on that, because he did say it takes more than just a seed to become a father. That famous quote that he said. People are being shot on CTA trains and buses. It was announced that police will be patrolling the CTA platforms and buses. Riders are saying something different because they're not seeing them on the buses, trains. What is going on? Because now CTA drivers and L assistants said, if I have a conceal and carry, I'm going to carry it at the job in order to protect myself. Are we coming to that stage? It's kind of like we're going to have this big press conference. We're going to have an announcement, a press release. We're going to have 257 and 9 and all these stations, and the police is going to be on the platforms and stuff, and we're hearing that's not the case, and this was announced 2 months ago. What is going on?
Well, I mean, you need more police officers to do something like that. You would almost have to double the force to put a cop on every bus, a cop on every train platform. Um, and then what happens on the train itself? You'd have to hire so many more people. I don't think that Chicago, in its current budgetary state, can afford it at this point.
Then why not hire private security
Well,
like
you got to
it?
pay them. You
Well,
got
the
to pay them
CTA can pay them.
with what?
What I mean, they
Raise the fares?
no, they dipped into federal assistant money.
Really?
Yeah,
The
they
federal
did.
government's $30 trillion in debt or something like that.
I know that, but they did it before. Why not do it
Do
again?
it. Did it before when?
What I'm saying is, um, I think Lopez called out the mayor, and I think this was almost a year ago, or if not 2 years ago, when the pandemic happened. To balance the city budget, she used part of that federal assistant money to balance it.
Hmm.
What I'm saying, if she did it for that, why not do it for
But
this?
the federal money's not continuing to flow. The federal money has pretty much stopped. That was COVID related money that was given to all the states and the cities uh, for those purposes. And if anything, it's caused a lot of inflation by flooding the marketplace with all that money because it was funny money. It wasn't real. You know what I mean? And and there's a I, to stop the violence. I believe we have to. It begins with some family centered programs to help people parent less children.
We had the programs, like we said on the show, but every time we have these programs, they get cut. We had parenting programs, they get cut. So every time we try to go forward, somebody pulls us back because they look at black and white. And now we're in a situation that in an dire need of protection on the CTA. Ridership, I mean, I'm sensing this. Riderships is going to go down
Oh,
dramatically.
I don't ride it anymore. I used to ride it all the time. I don't ride the red and blue line anymore. I don't
Right.
do it
Right,
because
because now they're saying I will pay the high prices of an Uber or a Lyft to get where I'm going in order to endure what's going on. Is Chicago becoming a lawless city?
yes, yes. I mean, it is right now a pretty much lawless city, and I think what's happening different now is that a lot of the bad guys, the criminals, are moving out of their neighborhood because they've been doing that in their own neighborhood for a long time. It's been a lot less lucrative because people in the neighborhood just don't have a lot of stuff to take.
But do you also think this is a Mayor Daley regentification plan to remember it was stationary, as you put it, and he really wanted those projects to come down. Now they're down. They got to go somewhere. That was part of his plan.
But that was a few years ago. The somewhere was places like South Shore, where neighborhoods were impacted by people who came from the suburbs. Inglewood was another neighborhood from the. I'm sorry, the suburbs is from the projects. Now you have people in those neighborhoods who are, you know, criminals. They're going to where the stuff is. They're going to West Town. They're going to Bucktown and Lincoln Park because they can get a nice car up there with the carjack. Or people out walking their dogs. Um, they know where to do crime. The lakefront areas. I mean, they're going to those places to do the crime. And what's different, Roman,
North Avenue Beach.
North Avenue, what's different is before the George Floyd situation, the Chicago police would stop a young brother with dreadlocks, and some tattoos from hanging out. They immediately would stop you, and it was unfair, and it was stop and frisk. They did that. You didn't light. I mean, if you were in a certain neighborhood and you weren't going to dinner or going to work, they stopped you. They don't do that anymore.
The Taste of Chicago was a disaster.
Was it?
Yeah,
I saw some pictures of it.
low
That.
turnout, very
Hmm.
low turnout. I gathered secondhand because I didn't go information, very low turnout, a handful of vendors. Back in the day, you was there,
Sure.
and Channel 7 used to have a
Hmm.
booth and stuff like that. Very few food vendors.
Hmm.
So you didn't really have the Robinson ribs and stuff like that. This is not a good representation of Chicago being featured because the Taste of Chicago was a tourist attraction. Now it turns out to be the Taste of Chicago, like a small block party or a dull firecracker.
Hmm.
Your thoughts on the Taste of Chicago of yesterday and now today? Do you think Rahm Emanuel messed this up?
No, no.
Do you
I
think
think I think the pandemic, the George Floyd situation, and what I was talking about a few seconds ago, people, there's the criminals can move around in downtown without anybody stopping them. And the whole stop and frisk piece. They're not the police are not police. They're only showing up after somebody gets jacked or somebody gets mugged or robbed. That's what they do, and people are getting wise. They're not putting themselves out for that. I mean, I wouldn't do that. I would not. Like I told you earlier, I don't ride the red line anymore. I don't do it.
Do you think it's time because Pritzker made some kind of announcement regarding what I'm about to say a couple of weeks ago in regards of National Guard? You're still against having the National Guard. What are your thoughts?
I don't think the National Guard. They're not policemen. They're soldiers. They're
But do
truck
you think we
drivers,
need
and
some type of
mhm.
force to get this
You
back
need
on
well.
track?
You're going to need a coordinated effort between the police department, city hall, the police department, and the Cook County State's attorney. They're going to basically have to get tough again. They're going to have to get tough. That's the only way you're going to stop it. I mean, if you're going to be riding around in Westtown in a stolen car looking for somebody to jack, the cops know who these people are. They know who they are, but they aren't stopping them. They aren't stopping them now, and questioning them, and the bad guys. They complain. Oh, he's racist. He's racist. He profiled me. Well, that's what cops do, and you fit the profile. Show me your ID.
So you're
Oh,
saying
you got warrants? Oh, no, you got. They're not doing that right now.
so you're saying, and very quickly because we're
Mm-hmm.
almost running out of time. If somebody is wearing a hoodie, it's 90 degrees outside, wearing a hoodie, walking down your street, what would you do?
Walking down my street,
Walking down your street, 90-degree weather.
and I live downtown, right? I live downtown. 90-degree weather, hoodie
Yeah,
in the middle of the day
yeah.
wouldn't make me any difference. I wouldn't care. But if it was at night, if it was at night when and the street was empty and I saw my brother, I would definitely go on radar immediately and say I'm watching very closely because that's what's happening. They're coming downtown because that's where the people are who have things to take. I heard somebody tell me that in the neighborhood, the dope man is broke. It's no crime to be committed down there because nobody's got anything in it. It's like that. So they come to places where they can get paid. And they don't have to worry. In other words, downtown is not inhospitable anymore. It used to be you don't want to go down there because they harass you. But now they go to Michigan Avenue and do what they got to do because nobody's preemptive about stopping them.
Well, the doctor has spoken, and you diagnosed us for it
Well,
again.
I didn't die. The thing is, you bring me on here and you make me say things that people don't want to hear. But
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's
That's
I
why you're
gotta
the
tell you the
doctor.
truth.
Yeah, that's why. Don't be a stranger. You're gonna come back. All right, bro. All right, Earl Winfrey. Thanks a lot. Wanda behind the scenes. We're gonna have the one and only Roland Burris here in studio next Monday. You guys have a wonderful week.